For a $20 game, Hollow Knight Silksong has so much content to the point where we don't really even need any DLC for the game, especially this early on in the game's life. However, since the game is already confirmed to be getting DLC, I came up with my favorite ideas for content in the future. Now, I never said these would be creative ideas because trust me, they're not really, but I do think they will be insanely fun if they actually do get added to the game. As always, shout out to my channel members and make sure to subscribe so we can up those numbers. We're closing in on 50,000 subscribers and I think we can hit it very, very soon. Also, in case you couldn't tell, this video will include spoilers for the endings of both of these games. With that out of the way, let us begin. Starting the video off, I'm going to talk about the most cliche and possibly generic idea for DLC, and that is a DLC that brings back Hallownest, which is the map from the first game. Now, I'm sure this would make zero sense practically speaking, since if you try to leave Pharloom in Silksong, Hornet speaks to herself that if she left, Pharloom would be doomed. So I guess this wouldn't really work well because of that, but still, I have a few things to say about this idea. So I think if they press the right buttons with this could be an awesome DLC, and here's why I think so. First off, it would give us a better conclusion of Hallownest. We'd get to see what really happened to Hallownest after the events of Hollow Knight, and we'll be able to definitively prove which ending Silksong takes place after, since players have been debating whether or not the game takes place after the Dream No More ending or the Embrace the Void ending. I personally hope it's the Dream No More ending, since that will always be the most narratively satisfying ending, so it only makes the most sense. And yeah, so for people who are mildly interested in the lore and honestly the nostalgia of Hallownest, this could be really, really fun. And seeing some of the old characters and getting to fight them again, but this time as Hornet, for example, the Dung Defender or the Mantis Lords. And obviously these wouldn't be the exact same bosses as they were in the first game. They would be pretty much overhauled as new fights and specifically altered to better fit Hornet's playstyle. However, the reason I'm starting out the video with this DLC idea is that I think it's the most flawed. The more I think about it, Team Cherry would have to edit a lot of Hallownest in order to make this work. Not saying they aren't capable of doing that, it's just this DLC idea would not be as simple as everyone thinks. I think the biggest flaw with this DLC is that it might just end up being filler content. Like, here guys, just go explore the same place you already have. This sounds like a fine idea, but every time I've played another game that does something similar, it just never feels quite right. One example is Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I played these games earlier this year, and these games take place in the Johto region of Pokemon, but after you finish the main game, you can actually visit the Kanto region. However, it's very watered down and kinda disappointed me. Another game that did this was Red Dead Redemption 2, where once again, after you completed the main game, you could visit New Austin from Red Dead 1. But this area sucks in Red Dead 2. There's almost nothing interesting to do here. One of the best side content features in Red Dead are the stranger missions, but there is literally not a single one in this entire region. It's just empty filler content. So what I'm saying is that this could be an awesome idea for Silksong. However, there are also so many ways to easily mess this DLC up. If Team Cherry plays their cards right, it could still be very great. You know how a lot of Hollow Knight's best bosses are locked behind the Dream Realm, which requires the Dream Nail to visit? Well, Hornet has her own mystical item known as the Needle-In, so we could see this item being used in spots in Hallownest that were previously not there, and I think that would be a great way to make this DLC worth the re-exploration of Hallownest. And since a lot of time has passed, there needs to be a lot of new pathways as well. All in all, I'm including this idea in the video because it has the potential to be great, but it is going to take a lot more effort to pull off than you might be thinking. Okay, so the first segment of the video was a little bit all over the place, but we're now going to talk about the most obvious idea for DLC, and that is a boss rush area. Similar to the Godholm Pantheons from the first Hollow Knight, Godholm is an area that is the core difference between Hollow Knight being a 9 out of 10 and Hollow Knight being a 10 out of 10. It adds so much extra value to the game, one of its best features being how it makes the bosses so much more memorable, and I think Silksong's bosses could desperately use this, because they're just as good good as the first game's bosses, but you just have less opportunities to revisit them. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this DLC because, I mean, we all know something like this is going to come out. I think the only real question we have is how different it will be. I'm sure the same important features will be there. A few boss rushes in a row followed by a run involving every boss in the game, a couple really great new boss fights that are exclusive to the boss rush, and of course getting access to the ability to just fight any boss individually. Again though, we all know something like this is coming, so let's just move on to some of the more speculatory ideas. This next idea is an absolute slam dunk of an idea, if I do say so myself, and it's something I've heard people theorize about, and that is a boss fight against the Knight, also known as the vessel that you play as in the first game. For obvious reasons, this would make for an incredible boss fight. Now, it wouldn't be able to happen in the corporeal realm since the Knight no longer has the same form as he does when you play as him in Hollow Knight, but I think an amazing idea for this fight would be for it to take place in Hornet's memories, albeit it would have to take some creative liberties for the sake of the boss fight, and basically the fight would span multiple areas and multiple backgrounds. The fight would first start off in Green Path, where Hornet first confronts the Knight in Hollow Knight, and the Knight's attack patterns are fairly easy. Next, it takes you to the City of Tears, which is the area where Hornet and the Knight meet in the first game, right in front of the statue of the Pure Vessel, and at this stage the Knight gets faster and a bit deadlier, and the final phase would take place in Kingdom's Edge, where you'd normally fight the Hornet Sentinel boss in the original game. Here you would face the Knight at his full potential, strength, and athleticism. There could also be a bonus stage where he is turned into the Shade Lord, which to my knowledge is something we see happen in the Embrace the Void ending. But yeah, this boss fight would have so much amazing potential. Another boss fight that would be pretty cool is a boss fight against the Hollow Knight, which was the final boss of the first couple endings from the first game. Now, this would again probably have to happen in Hornet's memories, but the reason I think it would be very cool is that in the Embrace the Void ending of Hollow Knight, we actually see Hornet and the Hollow Knight get into an encounter, but we never get to see what actually happens since it's a cliffhanger. Now, I don't think this boss fight would be as cool as a Vessel boss fight, mainly because I can't think of what kind of new moves the Hollow Knight could have. Maybe since literally just prior to the encounter, the Hollow Knight gets freed of the Radiance Curse, we'll see kind of a mix between his Pure Vessel moveset and his Sealed Vessel moveset. That could work pretty well. Overall, I think this idea has potential as well. So now that we're about halfway through the video, I want to take a brief... Sorry, it's heavy. I want to take a brief look at this keyboard sent to me by 8BitDo. Now, if you're like me and you're a huge fan of all things retro gaming, you have definitely heard about 8BitDo, as they're a company that has made so many great retro gaming accessories. I myself have been buying their products for around a year now, my favorite of these being this wireless SNES controller that plugs right into my Super Nintendo. But now let's focus on the keyboard they just sent me, which is the 8BitDo Retro Mechanical Keyboard. Now, this is a gaming keyboard for modern PCs, so it's not for retro games. However, it is retro gaming themed. For those who aren't aware, this is modeled and inspired by the Nintendo Famicom, which we outside of Japan know as the Nintendo Entertainment System. But again, in Japan, it's called the Famicom, short for Family Computer. This keyboard is completely modeled after the look of the Family Computer, and you're listening to what the keys sound like right now, and I think they sound really good. This is more of a clicky keyboard, so if you're a fan of, let's say, Razer keyboards, like the Huntsman or Black Widow, I think this one will be right up your alley. I especially love how the arrow keys are supposed to be the D-pad, and you've also got the A and B buttons right here too. Now, what makes this thing so versatile is, first of all, you can use it wired, wirelessly, or even Bluetooth, meaning it's not just PCs you can use this with. But also, the keyboard comes with these big, beefy external buttons that can be mapped to hotkeys. So for example, if you're a video editor like me, you can map these to a specific key in order to edit way faster. Personally, I'm not sure if I will use these, but it is a neat inclusion. Now, aside from that, there's not too much to talk about since it's another gaming keyboard. I have a lot of these. However, I love the theming, I love the sound, it's incredibly useful because of how many ways you can use it. I do have to talk about one singular issue that I have. The only issue I have with this keyboard is that there are no hinges on the back that allow you to lift the keyboard to an angle. All of my other keyboards have this, and it makes using them a bit more comfortable for me. It also makes the keyboard sound better in my opinion because the keys are not flush against the surface. You can still lift it if you absolutely had to using something something else, in this case my wallet, but for obvious reasons, it's not as practical as just having the lift built into the keyboard. For me, this is an issue I have with the keyboard that does affect my personal enjoyment. However, it's the absolute only problem I have with it at all, so I'm still going to give the keyboard a great score of 8.5 out of 10. This keyboard is still so great. Also, just thought I'd mention, I wrote the whole script for this segment using the keyboard that I'm talking about. I thought that was a bit funny, but it's probably not. Thank you so much to 8BitDo for sending me this really heavy thing. That's another thing I forgot to mention. It is a heavy keyboard, which I actually consider a good thing because it's going to stay in place when you're gaming. But yeah, huge thank you to them for sending me this, and I'm really looking forward to working more with them in the future. Thanks for watching this segment, guys, and back to the video. Okay, this next idea is going to be a bit more of a hear me out idea, and that is a boss fight against the Hunter, which, if you didn't remember, is the guy from the first game that gives you the Hunter's Journal and tells you to complete it. If you also remember correctly, once you complete the journal, the Hunter will challenge you to battle, except it turns out to just be a prank. However, I would love to see the Hunter actually become a boss fight in Silksong's DLC, and this is how I think it could work. First of all, just a minor point, but the Hunter does seem to be a Weaver, the same species as Hornet, and we already have a few other Weaver boss fights in Silksong, and they're amazing. So there is a connection there, but the biggest connection is definitely Hornet's journal entry from the first game. Now keep in mind, the quotes in the journal are all written by the Hunter, and he says, "I have seen this nimble little creature. I thought her prey and pounced at her, but with a flash, she stabbed me with her flying stinger and darted away. Could she be a Hunter?" So this entry confirms that Hornet and the Hunter have already had an encounter. It does seem like the encounter was very brief, but I wouldn't mind if they took a bit of creative liberty here and just made it a boss fight anyway. I think this would be pretty cool, but let me know what you think in the comments. I shouldn't have to make any spoiler warnings in this video, since if you clicked on this video to begin with, you likely don't care about spoilers and have already beaten Silksong, but I'm going to anyway because we are going to be talking about and showing the final boss from Silksong in this segment. So the Silk Mother is the final boss in the first few endings of Hollow Knight Silksong, and I personally was not disappointed by the boss. I thought it was great. However, some players were really disappointed by it, saying it was way too easy. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I beat it on my first try, but I never got the impression that it was too easy. It wasn't that difficult by any means, but difficulty wise, it was still really engaging, and honestly, I think I just got lucky. Anyway, we're not really here to discuss the difficulty of this fight. Actually, I guess we are, because I'm here to propose the idea of getting a more difficult version of the fight, just like we got with the Pure Vessel and the Absolute Radiance from the original game. I personally think this is an amazing idea, and would easily be the final boss of the Godhome area, and since it fixes the thing people didn't like about the original fight, its difficulty, it would very easily become one of the best bosses in all of Silksong. Make the boss faster, throw more projectiles, and add an extra stage at the end, and I think we will have another truly incredible boss. So, before I talk about my final idea for Silksong DLC, I actually decided to invite a few other creators on to show you their ideas for Silksong DLC. So without further ado, the first creator is going to be Metroidvania Guru, who, as the name implies, makes content surrounding all things Metroidvanias. If you're looking for other games that are similar to Hollow Knight, he's your guide. But let me go ahead and step away so he can explain his idea.
Hey, I'm the Metroidvania Guru, and for Silksong's DLC, I'd like to see Team Cherry play more with the quote-unquote memory realm that she visited in the Red Memory sequence. The coolest part in Silksong was how Hornet was able to reach into her memories and pull the Everbloom flower out into her present reality. There's so much potential there. Most likely, Team Cherry may use this memory realm concept as their Pharloom Pantheon. Hornet enters the memory realm to do all kinds of Pantheon-like boss rush nonsense that could include harder versions of these bosses because she can fight them in their prime, sorta how she fought all those bosses to get the hearts in the third act. Now, saying Team Cherry is gonna make a Pharloom Pantheon is a lot like saying water is wet. So, I wanted to take the memory realm concept a little further. Now, I haven't thought of all the details, but how cool would it be if Grandmother Silk is still alive in the memory realm? Because she's a higher being who essentially created Silk and all its magical properties, who's to say what GMS can and can't do with the substance? Like the Radiance, maybe just the memory of GMS is enough to keep her going. So, GMS starts controlling and manipulating bugs from beyond the grave, thanks to their memories of her. And Hornet must find a way back into the memory realm to take true Grandmother Silk out for good, wiping her from everyone's memories somehow. This could be interesting because maybe Hornet enters the memory realm of Pharloom's collective consciousness. This would open doors to Pharloom's past and maybe give us that coral biome we all loved from the trailer that got scrapped. There's just a ton of potential here. And here's the plot twist. Grandmother Silk wanted Hornet to face her in the memory realm because GMS wants Hornet to do with her what was done to get the Everbloom. She wants Hornet to pull her out of the memory realm and into the present reality. How will she manipulate Hornet to do this? She promises to bring Hera, Hornet's mother, back with her. Hornet's tempted, but ultimately does the right thing and takes GMS out for good. Bonus points if Hera doesn't assist to take true GMS down. It could be an emotional moment for our little hunter. And we could call this DLC Threads of Remembrance or something like that. Yeah, now that's a DLC I'd love to play.
Holy shit, I did not expect him to go that hard with that idea. He made full-blown new lore from the ground up. I'm not gonna lie, that slapped. And as you can see, we were definitely on the same page with getting a more difficult Grandmother Silk boss fight. Great minds think alike. This would definitely be a fantastic addition to the game. Also, I definitely agree the red memory is one of the best parts in the entire game. Even just seeing that Hallownest elevator gave me chills. Anyway, thanks so much to Metroidvania Guru for sharing his idea, and make sure to subscribe to him, link in the description. Next up is going to be MilesNugget. Now, me and Miles make pretty similar content. We're both wannabe Nintendo YouTubers that make content on indie games instead. Jokes aside, make sure to subscribe to Miles too. He's super close to 70k.
Miles here, and for my DLC, we are going to expand on the most important character in the game, Mr. Mushroom. That's right. So at the end of the Mr. Mushroom ending, we see to be continued, but most likely there won't be a new game. So this DLC will be the continuation. By silk soaring at the top of Pharloom, you will go to a brand new area in space. You will have meteorites to platform on, new space enemies, and a brand new boss that will summon entire planets to crush the arena. And since it is in outer space, the bugs around this area can be the most scary and disturbing looking creatures there are, all while in the search for Mr. Mushroom. Once you do find him at the very end, you'll see him at a Mr. Mushroom shrine where all his ancestors lie, ending with a Mr. Mushroom boss fight. And just because he is Mr. Mushroom, let's make him the hardest boss fight in the game, just for fun. Your reward is a secret ending where you fly off into space with Mr. Mushroom. The only true ending that should be canon.
Alright, thank you Miles, that was something. Hope you enjoyed hearing what these content creators had to say, and be sure to check their channels out below. If you enjoy my content, there's no reason you wouldn't enjoy theirs. And yeah, now let's take a look at my final idea for the video. And for the last idea of the video, I went with a pretty creative idea, at least I thought it was, and that's going to be a Lost Hornet boss fight. Basically, this would be Hornet against Hornet, specifically against a Hornet that has been swallowed and consumed by the Void, similar to the Lost Lace boss fight in Act 3. Now, the way I think this boss fight would work is, it would be very similar to the Hornet boss fights from the first game, but as the fight goes on, Lost Hornet would mix in a ton of insanely powerful Void-driven attacks. Now, the way I got this idea is I thought about the Shadow Link boss fights in the Legend of Zelda series. These boss fights from Zelda 2 and Ocarina of Time are not fantastic boss fights mechanically, but they're really interesting ideas that have always remained very iconic, and I think there would be infinite possibilities for a boss fight like this in Silksong. And also, my expectations for this fight would be that it would be the hardest boss in the entire game. So there you have it. Those were my ideas for DLC and Silksong. I know these were not the most creative ideas out there, but I enjoyed talking about why I think they could work. Like I said in the intro, Silksong doesn't even really need DLC aside from the Godhome Pantheon area. I'd still love to see all these ideas brought to life in the best ways possible. Be sure to let me know about your ideas for DLC in the comments below. I would love to hear what kinds of ideas you guys have. Once again, thank you to 8BitDo for sending me their retro mechanical keyboard, and thanks to my friends over at Metroidvania Guru and MilesNugget. It was fun having you guys on the channel. Thanks for checking out this video, and I'll talk to you again soon.